Welcome to the Work is Weird Now podcast. Whether you're nearing retirement, entering the workforce for the first time, or caught somewhere in the confusing muddle in the middle, you're likely sensing it and you're probably living it. We know we are, and we want to know why. Listen in as we interview experts and everyday people like you to find out how best to navigate the ever-growing weirdness of work in the modern age. Welcome to the Work is Weird Now podcast. Today we have two for the price of one. We have Emma and Ruta, who are the co-hosts of the Blame It on Marketing podcast. They have 12 seasons under their belt, which of course makes them our heroes. They're also seasoned marketing consultants and fractional CMOs. We've invited them here today to talk to us about curiosity. Why curiosity? Well, we believe, and many business leaders agree, that it's the work superpower of today and possibly the most underestimated but powerful advantage that you can bring into today's world of work. And so we're going to talk to Emma and Ruta about how curiosity has shaped their careers and how it continues to inform their work today. So welcome, guys. Can we start by talking about your careers to date and whether or not you are where you thought you'd be at this point?
Great question.
Go first.
I can go first. I thought about this one. Yes and no, because I got to the end of like what my career is very fast. So, and then it's like, well, what else is there? And I haven't got a goal for what else is there. Like I'm doing a bunch of stuff. So I got to like, I was a fractional CMO, like, I don't know, before I was 30. So I was like, oh, well, that's it. That's as good as marketing is going to get for me. So, you know, we're doing the podcast and we're doing other things, but I haven't actually thought about what like the next thing is to actually even evaluate against. So yes and no.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, I think, who look around once they've got to that top point or what they thought was the top point in their career and think, okay, well, what do I do now? So yeah, really interesting. What about you, Emma? Are you where you thought you'd be?
I think it's an obvious no, because I don't think I've never really had a career plan or a kind of like goal around work. I think ultimately for me, like work serves as the vehicle to give me the life that I want, and so I think, yeah, I feel like I'm getting there to having that balance that I want, but yeah, not yet, sadly. But you know,
so is your work goals? They're not work goals; they're like life goals that work will achieve.
Yeah, that work will help me achieve. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So it's that way round for me. And it's taken me a really long time to kind of accept that, actually, because I think you do, especially when you're younger, you're like, how can I get to the top the quickest that I possibly can go? And then you're like, actually, what about my life? And I think that's, it's been as a result of life things happening. And then you go, oh, actually, life is the thing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think, don't know if you stepped out of uni as well. And I'm like, I'm going to be a marketing manager in 5 years. Like it was the classic. And then the whole marketing director thing is on the horizon. I'm going to do it before this age. And then I've listened to a lot of sporting podcasts, actually, of people who have won. One was a woman who won the CrossFit Games and literally stepped off the podium and a coach was like, how's it feel? And she just went, not as good as I thought it was going to. Yeah. Actually, it's like that journey bit of figuring things out and the lessons that all brings. And like you say, moments that make you just go, hang on, there's a reason why we're all here. We're here to live, not to work. And sometimes we end up getting the wrong way round, don't we? And it takes moments to go, ooh.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm super lucky being being a fractional CMO is a great gig. Like, you know, helping businesses grow, all that stuff is lovely. Ruta and I always talk about how our personalities are so closely tied up with our marketing work and the problems that brings. But I think, like as time has progressed, like I say, especially over the last year, I've been a bit more like, okay, I am working to live. I'm not living to work anymore. And how do I shift that in my mindset? How do I, make sure I get the things out of work that I need so that I can have the life that I want to have? So, yeah.
So in this context then of trying to carve out the type of career that you want, how has curiosity served you along the way?
Well, I think I mean, if I think about my entire career, I've skipped around. I've done different things. You know, I wasn't a marketer to start with. And I'll be honest, if I don't find something interesting and I don't stay curious, to me, that's kind of the like time to go. It's like, oh, I'm not finding this as interesting. I'm not wanting to learn about this thing anymore. That is the time for change. So I think, and where we are now, I think we're in a very privileged position. Like we talked about the podcast, we get to constantly learn from amazing people all the time. And for me, that is my learning and development now. And I love it. And I've not got bored yet. Ruta's like, don't get bored, please.
You're not allowed to quit, basically.
No.
Like we're doing this till we're grannies.
But yeah, definitely I've done all sorts of different things, but all from the point of view of like interest and curiosity. Like that's probably the one thing across my career that I can say has always got to be there. Otherwise, yeah, I lose interest.
Do you think curiosity is something that you both inherently have, or do you think it's something you've developed over time? And is it something that everybody could develop if they put their minds to it?
I do think we have it inherently. I think we're people that get bored easily. So curiosity kind of is a fix to boredom. And that can sometimes be not great, but it does serve its purposes when you're a marketer and it's quite positive. I do think if you don't like learning, it can be hard to start because it's like an intrinsic driver in a way. So if you don't have that intrinsic driver, it's like, oh, I don't like going to the gym, but I have to go to the gym. So you have to kind of force yourself to do it. But I think it's totally trainable and totally like achievable, but maybe the degree to which you find it easy or the degree to which you are curious is going to be different if you're not kind of intrinsically driven to be, if that makes sense.
I think it's also attached to risk, isn't it? Curiosity and risk for me kind of weirdly go hand in hand, because when I didn't used to be a very curious person, but then with the first job I ever had, it's a really random job, I used to transcribe books into Braille. Very random.
Wow. And
if I hadn't done that job, I wouldn't have then quit that job to go off to university to do a degree in English literature. And so at the point that I got that job, I was not interested. I mean, I was a 19-year-old, just being a 19-year-old, but that sort of like sparked the flame. But the risk of quitting the job and going off and doing something completely different wasn't there, because I was younger, because, like university in this country, we can get loans, it can be paid for. So some of that risk isn't there. And I think if you're someone who is maybe a bit risk averse, like especially at work, like you want to do the same job for 10 years and work for the same company and just have stability, maybe that curiosity thing isn't something that you feel you need. And that is also okay. But I think if you're feeling like you're stuck because you've been that person, then that is the time to try and think about like where you can find curiosity that feels safe. So without going off and quitting your job and going to university, like, is it just learning a new skill, or is it like speaking to people who are more like, who do interesting things, or taking up a new hobby? So yeah, I think it just depends maybe where you're at in your life as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one of the reasons why we thought this would be a good topic to discuss with you guys is obviously you are all about marketing and the world of marketing. And I think Dan and I were discussing yesterday how marketing is often the sort of canary in the coal mine for kind of work trends in general, right? Because it is a profession that straddles data and human insights. It's often one of the first things to be cut from a budget because it's often not understood, or the ROI isn't as apparent as some of the other roles sometimes to organizations. And so I think marketing often has to be more adaptable, faster, and more resilient in order to weather some of these changes. So I think just bringing it back into the kind of marketing profession then, how do you think more curiosity can serve marketing people these days?
Just that. So I think we've probably all met marketers that don't have the tendency to be curious and to want to learn new things. And the only thing that comes to mind when that happens is like, oof, you're going to have a hard time developing your career, because marketing changes all the time, and what works even changes all the time. Even if like the world doesn't seem to have changed, the thing you've been putting out all of a sudden stops working, and what you're going to do about it, So I think curiosity can be a really good cure for basically not being super negative. I'll explain that better. I think curiosity can be a good way to move forward and not be negative about bad things happening in your sphere, because performance is going to go up and down all the time. And if you're curious to why and how to fix that, you're going to prevent yourself from being like, oh, well, I must be shit at my job then. That's it. Or like, oh, this company must be shit. That's it. It provides you a tool to like go and do something with and move forward with, in my experience. And I think marketers, God, they need that so much, like more than probably other minus salespeople, more than other, departments, because things just stop working or things change and you have to go with it. Like there's just no way you can progress without it.
I love that. And I love that you use the word cure, because so often we're measured with the amount of data that's available now. We can almost become forensic in the data management and almost step back and go, hang on, what's actually going on here? And it goes back to macro things, that themes around people have choice and they're going to make that buying decision when they're ready. But if you're not curious, like, yes, have a plan, but it can't be so rigid that if you veer away, and when you veer away, because you will veer away from the plan, because you have to, because performance will just drop. Something that worked once will not always work again. But that's not failure. And I love that you use the word cure, because you have to be curious to try new things and go and explore what's happening, because it's the rate of change is huge. I think change is the only constant now, right?
I think. Yeah, I'm English literature girly. I'm like, that's the only thing that's ever been constant. Is change. Yeah, and it's interesting because, I think it's funny when you meet people who work in marketing who don't seem to want to adapt. It seems like a really weird, like counter. It's like, maybe this isn't the job for you. Yeah, because everything is constantly in flux for us, like all the time, So and I think, maybe it's like, maybe it's a chicken and egg thing. Are you curious because you want to learn new things, or are you curious because you have to be, because things are constantly changing all the time? I think in marketing, it's probably a bit of both. Like, I think there's been a lot of resistance to things like the AI tools. We just recorded an episode about how people can actually tangibly use AI tools for marketing and talking that through together, which was really good for us, like, to be able to discuss that really openly and transparently. But so many people are still on the shelf about it, or, hating on people for using it to write social media posts and all those sorts of things. So it's like, but if we don't adapt to that is, to me, that's a bit of a do or die situation, right? So there's an element of kind of needing to be like that in marketing.
Do you think ChatGPT and tools like that are curiosity enablers or curiosity killers for marketers?
For me, enabler, if you use it in the right way. I mean, we were even talking about meta prompting, where you're like, how can I write a good prompt to prompt this thing? And I think that's an enabler. I also think in a world where, the UK is at the bottom, I think, of the G7, isn't it, for investment in learning and development within businesses. Like, we're terrible at like teaching people and investing in learning and development for people, which is just shocking for such a wealthy country. Like, how else are you going to upskill yourself if you don't use the tools that are at your fingertips? ChatGPT, you can use it for free. Not saying you should, but you can ask it. We were talking about, asking it to write you a curriculum of like, I want to learn about this thing. Can you teach me how to do this thing in 7 weeks? And it will write you a syllabus, So it's like, to me, it's an enabler.
I think there's one more point that I will add to curiosity and learning, which we're kind of using together. But if you're more junior and you don't necessarily know how you like to learn or how you like to work, a lot of that will be dependent on probably the culture that you are in at work. So if the culture of work is don't ask questions, just get your head down and do stuff, you can start to internalize that as what you want to do. So I think just reflect on the culture and the environment you're in to understand how you're feeling about that. Because, I've always worked in startups. if you're not curious and you're not learning, you're not going to make it in startups. But that has been my lens all the time. So obviously I think it's a good thing, and like all of these things. So you start to have like these inbuilt biases. So it's just a reflection thing of like, you know, is it my environment? Is it me? Like, you know, how do I actually want to do stuff, and just understanding yourself basically.
I'm working with a client at the moment, so a real life experience of that. There is one marketer, she's sort of manager level, entry manager level, and it's just her. And I asked her outright, I said, are you using ChatGPT? And I saw her face change, like there was a physical reaction. I was like, it's all right. Like you should be, you're on your own. Yeah. I hope you are, because you need to be using it for efficiency, not for just producing all of your work. Use it for your teammate, your challenge, your soundboard, and efficiency in curation where you can. And that's what the bit we've got to normalise. But we've touched on it in a previous episode. Women see it as cheating. And we've got to unravel that one very, very quickly. Because also I think women in marketing, but marketers have got really bad rep anyway, don't we? We're seen as fluff, the expense, or, you know, the pens and logos department, whatever. There is almost a negative connotation to our trade, unless people really understand true strategic marketing. And I suppose there's that question around what is the emotional labour of always being curious when you are the marketer in the room, when you're already starting from a negative with some of your stakeholders. Have you had experience of that?
Oh yeah, definitely been told we ask too many questions, or like just get on, the just get on with it thing. Like you can't spend a month looking at the data, obviously before our AI friends existed, you can't spend months doing an audit and all that kind of stuff. We just need you to get on with stuff. We just need stuff out, and the people in the room don't understand. And that is, we talked about it at the beginning, which is that, our personalities and the way we feel about ourselves is really closely tied to our work. So it's really hard not to take that personally. And I think even like Ruta and I were talking about it, the last couple of weeks, I've been having a little stress moment because I've been taking it really personally that, I've not been able to work in the way that I'm accustomed to. So I can see it then starts to impact your life outside of work. And that's when it's, that emotional burden of being the person that always wants to ask the questions, to understand, to get the purpose of something right. That's when it starts to become negative, which is so sad because, I guess everything in business should be that. Of course, it's driven by the bottom line. Of course, it's your shareholders should be happy. But if you're building something or you're doing something for the sake of it, like,
it can be threatening. I think that happens a lot. Like I've had many a conversation where, I'm like a 30-year-old female coming in and being like, your business model sucks and here's why. Not in those words, but like your business model doesn't add up. I want to be successful here. I want you to be successful. We need to have a chat about how your business model doesn't add up. And I'm in a room of like board members and the CEO, and they're all like, whatever, like got funding. And it's like, who are you? Like, what? I thought you do marketing, so there is an element of like that emotional baggage of, if you do ask all of these questions and you do see what the answer is, you can be, one, threatening, and two, perceived as negative, because actually you did go away and do, the whole thing and you figured it all out, and like you're pooping on the parade basically, because you're saying like, this thing you've planned is not going to work, and I can tell you right now it's not going to work, but I want it to work, which is why I'm telling you it's not going to work. So I think it can be that as well, especially with like, sales leaders, and it's like, well, why are you encroaching on my conversion rates? Like, don't worry, like worry about your marketing bit. And it's like, no, it's all together. Like, we all need to work together and do everything better to like hit these insane goals usually, which is like the premise, right?
And you get, I just need a brochure.
Yeah. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me.
I think one of the most important lessons that I learned once I started consulting, because I do think it doesn't matter whether you sit within an organization or you're outside. I think often being a consultant, you have more leeway to say the things that are difficult because they're paying for your time to be in that room. So they want to get the most out of you. But I think for me, one of the most important things that I learned was you don't have to be speaking to be adding value. And I think that was a huge learning for me. Once I started consulting, I realized that actually, if I just sit back and ask the questions and give people space and time to answer them, I'm going to learn what I need to learn. And then whatever observation I end up making is going to be far more powerful. So again, it kind of goes back to that curiosity from the standpoint of being willing to give the space and have the confidence to be curious too, right? Just to sit there and wait for them to fill in the silence. That is a hard challenge for people, especially for women and certainly for marketers.
I'm sure, Alice, you had moments where you go into an organization and you get like, you're dealing with a CEO and they're like, oh, this and this and this and this is wrong. And then you go talk to the team and it's like, oh, okay, you all know how to do this, how to fix it. You all know what's going on, but there's some X other blocker, which is why you can't do it, which I think curiosity always is great for that. Just listen to what people have to say in job because they usually know what's going on.
Yeah, so curiosity, I think, is something that serves individuals, which I think is what we've mostly been talking about. How can we be more curious as individuals to be better at our jobs? I think what is also quite interesting about the topic is that I was just reading something in Harvard Business Review, which was talking about, I always say I was just reading. I actually read it for the purposes of this podcast, just to be completely transparent. It's like I'm
Alice
always
is there flicking
I'm always
through.
just cash. Me and the HBR. But yeah, so I was reading about how so curiosity has been proven to foster openness and collaboration, right? So it's about reducing decision-making errors because it actually allows you to have those conversations that you might not have had otherwise. And what you're driven by to initially have that conversation is curiosity about the other person or about the topic or whatever it is. And then I also read that, only 24% of organizations actively encourage it. So do you have any thoughts about how organizations can more actively promote curiosity among not just individuals, but the entire staff?
Yeah. Do you want to start, Emma? I think we've got the same example.
Oh, yeah. Go on, you go.
As soon as you said that, for me, I think it's collaboration. So cross-team and forced collaboration. So if you have an OKR system, you have to have a collaborative OKR with someone else on some other team. And by nature of that, you will learn things you never thought to ask about, or even if you're not naturally curious, you'll find things out that you never knew about. So I think that's an easy thing to enforce and also to implement without having to change the overall culture and understanding and, how people work side of things.
In this dynamic duo, I am the layman's term person that always brings it right back to, can you just define the acronym and just for people who have never heard of that, what is it and how would it impact them as an employee and how could it be rolled out almost as a business?
Yeah. So OKR is a goal setting framework. It stands for objectives and key results. So you have an overarching objective. We need to hit £2 million in revenue. And under that, you have measurable measures and results that you can basically tick off as you go to say, we have done the actions to hit this number. So it's a way of setting goals. So you might do it within the whole business. So you have your yearly business goals set in these ways, but then that will filter down to your teams. And then when your team has a goal of, we need to hit X amount of money, you can enforce a collaborative goal, meaning that you can't achieve this by yourself. You have to go and work with the engineering team to achieve this. And then you work together to achieve the goal, typically done on a quarterly basis for most businesses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And hearing the word enforced collaboration, and I think what's happened in the past 5 years, we were all forced to go home and work from home. And some people have seen it as it's been a barrier. It's been a physical barrier of not having that in-person collaboration. But we often working in global teams. So it goes back to that curiosity. Are you reaching out? Are you motivated enough to reach out and have those connections with people to discover more or learn more? Or does actually having it enforced by the business to collaborate with somebody in a different country or just someone up in Liverpool and you're down in London, whatever, having that call to learn more and see how you can transfer that into your own lane?
Yeah. I mean, it works so well. And I think the other part about it is it's choosing the business goals in the first place, right? So if you take it one step higher than the OKRs, the thing is that the business needs to have those goals set. All good businesses should. If you're actually thinking you can grow without them, I mean, I mean, I'm sure you can, but it's flying by the seat of your pants. And I think, you know, like one of the goals that we always try and encourage any business to have is one that is around like customer experience or customer advocacy or something along those lines, because that does touch every part of the business. Yeah. Even if you are, you know, a dev or whatever, like you're supposed to be building the product to support the customer. If you're working in customer service, you should be delivering good service to support the customer. If you're in marketing, we should be trying to create advocates and content that supports our customer. You know, and if you can have something like that as a goal for the entire business, you can kind of enforce that collaborative element without having to like beat anyone over the head with a stick, you know, because you're basically saying like it is everybody's business in the business to make sure the customers are happy at the end of the day, which I think it is. You know, that's what we're all really, you know. Someone very wise, our good friend Timmy, said that revenue is a proxy for value, and I think about that every week. It lives rent free in my mind. And I think that's the point, right? It's like you will hit your revenue targets, you will make money as a business if you do those other things. You know, you have those company goals, you care about customer experience, you know, you care about also employee experience as well, not forgetting that one. So yeah, I think you can't go far wrong if you have goals set around those two things.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And we had an away day at the role that I'm currently in-house at part-time at the moment. And there was one sentence from the coach there who he sat there for most of the day, and we all do a lot of presentations about how we're all going to achieve everything, goals, etc. And he just said, you've got to remember, if you keep doing what you've always done, nothing's going to change. And that one's lived rent-free in my mind. It pops up every single day. And, you know, we can become, you know, we get into routines and things like that. And it's just about this small little thing kind of shift the needle on something slightly that might then have an impact. But that for me stems back to being curious and let's just try something new. We're not going wild and absolutely off the scale on risk, but let's just shift a little bit, because then you never know. And I think going back to marketers, it is almost our role to have a good plan, but then be curious to veer away from the plan. Because if it all goes tits up, it's all right, we'll go back to the plan. Like we haven't burned the whole budget.
We always say 80% of what works and make more of what works, 20% of brand new stuff that hopefully will feed into what works next, basically.
Love that, because we can't rest on our laurels that it's going to keep working, because it won't.
Also, if you're at a company where you're having to like double revenue, for example, what got you to 2 million is not going to get you to 4 million. You just can't scale like that. It doesn't work like that. So you have to come up with something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I often hear, you know, we don't really need to market because we've been so successful up to this point, which is always an interesting take.
I'm very happy for you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just go then. I'll be gone.
Your black book does run out eventually. You know, I do think it's that. Am I going to say something horrible? Don't know about men. But it is that kind of golf club, old boys school club mentality that makes people think that they can run like that forever. But, you know, what is it now? Like, it's got to be like 80% of your buyers are millennials. I don't think a lot of us behave like that. You know, even like scaling down to like Gen Zs are now in their like first management roles, you know? So like, we don't want that shit. Maybe some do, maybe some.
I still buy stuff off my mates, but it's because it's good. Not because they're my mates.
Well, they're the buyers, but they're also the future leaders. We're going to be hiring them as well, and they think differently. And time does change so fast. The little black book comment. So I remember it was one of the company where I met my husband, actually, and we had the most traditional salesperson you could ever meet, right? And I love him to pieces. Like he was just a really great guy. And we were implementing Salesforce as a CRM. And I'll never forget, he literally took it out of his pocket and was like, "You want me to put my contacts in there?" Yeah. And pointed at like to the laptop. And he was just horrified. It was like, no, like it was like his life. That was his life of sales contacts and all of that. But then I just always remember that it's like the real start of CRM Salesforce life. And it's that now. Can you imagine saying that to a Gen Z?
I think also we have to be aware that the competitive context is changing so fast, right? Like if we, I'm told every day by LinkedIn that I should be taking advantage right now and setting up 100 businesses on through ChatGPT. I'm not completely clear how that works, but that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think if it's that easy for me to create. Yeah, I know. But if it's, it's really easy for people to create a business these days and to scale quickly, faster than it ever has been possible before. So even if you think that you're safe, you just don't know what's coming. And again, it goes back to that curiosity thing. Again, you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone, to think differently, to put yourself in the minds of other people, to sort of see the landscape as it evolves, and to not be too kind of tunnel vision on who you are and where you think you're going. It's absolutely essential.
And to fuck up, right? You don't get curiosity and doing new stuff for free. You're gonna fuck it up, but
be okay with the failure.
You gotta be okay and keep rolling. Yeah.
So why did you start Blame It on Marketing? And I just want to add how much I love the name, because all marketers have been there. It's marketing's fault. Marketing didn't do their job. Yada yada. Why did you guys start the Blame It on Marketing podcast?
Well, so we used to work in-house together. And then the business successfully sold. We did what we were there to achieve. And then we all kind of parted ways, because that's what we all wanted to do. And Ruta and I started consulting at that point, both of us around the same time. And we were like constantly voice noting each other about like either crazy stuff we'd hear from clients or from prospect calls, or like poor marketing
stuff we'd find in CRMs,
stuff we'd find in CRMs, all sorts of stuff. And I think that was kind of the base of it. We were like, we are now in a very privileged position that we can talk about this stuff more publicly. That's not to say it doesn't come without risk, because obviously we are kind of lifting the lid on some of the taboo stuff that lots of marketers don't want to talk about publicly, because they're like, oh, I just have to accept it and get on with it. But yeah, so we started it 3 years ago. We
invited a bunch of our friends to the first season, and
sounds familiar.
There you go.
Haven't stopped since. And now we've made friends because of it. So it's learning for free. We went to a conference a little while ago, and it was a really good conference. And we sat through most of the marketing track, and I was like, Emma, this shit is old. This is like 2 years ago stuff. And she was like, yeah, because we have a podcast. That's why you think it's old. Because you're talking to people every week about the bleeding edge, basically. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. We can't stop.
And what's the aspiration? What is the aspiration?
I mean, I
world domination.
World domination. Ruta actually wants to be president of Lithuania, so we're going to work. That's where our marketing efforts are heading for her campaign trail. But aside from that, I think, one of the things, and this is not to sound like cringy, but we love the community bit of what we do. We like making marketers feel like the shit that's going on for them is normal. So I think more community stuff, it would be nice to do. We love doing more in-person events. And obviously,
if we could do Blame It on Marketing and didn't have to worry about money, that would be the most ideal. If we could do that, we've hit all the goals, basically.
One of us will make a tech product and sell it, and then keep the other one in the life of luxury. That's the plan.
Exactly.
Well, LinkedIn will tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
Just go on there.
So as we start to wrap up, because you guys have got 6 minutes till a LinkedIn Live, talk about hot minutes. So what would your advice or guidance on this topic of curiosity be, firstly to people and then to organizations?
Who wants to go? Yeah. Go.
I think, because I do think for some people there is this risk involved. I think, just nudge yourself a little bit to the left or the right, just a little step, baby step, for individuals. And then I think for businesses, the best way to support people is what we've talked about. We love good performance management. We love business strategies. We want you to have goals. You're letting your people down if you don't do that stuff. Take a pause. Make time for that stuff, and then you can support your people to be more curious and ultimately perform better.
Great, I couldn't agree more. If you're an individual and you're not curious, find curiosity not at work. Find it in other things and try and train yourself into it. And if you're sitting there and you're like, I can't be effed with any of this, maybe reflect on that and think about, how that might impact your life or might not impact your life, and what else you can bring to the table. If you're an organization and you don't have any kind of development plans or budgets, then again, come on, man, like, it's not that hard. And if you're a manager as well and you want to encourage curiosity in your team, physically provide them the space to do that. So physically give them the time and the space. Say, one Friday a month or whatever, we're just going to go off and do random stuff we've never done before, and then we're going to all report back to what we did. Like, you need to allow for that, because everyone's busy, everyone's overworked, everyone's got 1,000 things going on. So unless you give them the option and the space to do that, it's going to be hard to just, say something and be like, let's be more curious, and then get on with your week. Like, it's not how it works.
Absolutely. Great. That's great advice. Where can people find you, and where can they listen to the podcast if they want to? They should, obviously.
Yeah, so blame@marketing.com. If you can't find us anywhere for some reason, go there. And otherwise, we are all over LinkedIn. We are on every single podcast platform you can imagine, and also on YouTube. So
Reddit.
Reddit. If you can't find us, I'm surprised and worried.
If you ever want to put any anonymous spicy marketing questions in, Reddit's the place to go.
Do you have a thread for your weirdest blame it on marketing moments?
No.
Just love to hear some of those, but maybe that's a whole other episode.
We've had a few episodes we've never aired.
Really?
For reasons. So that would probably be in the bucket.
Reddit. That's a spicy Reddit thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can start. We'll start. Yeah. We don't mind.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much, and good luck on your LinkedIn Live in 3 minutes time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies.